Oil jumped back to 75. Damn it. See, I wanted to go long. Damn. Oh well. Missed the whole thing. For some reason, oil went so far down, and when the inventories came out, I was like, that seems kind of silly. We should like trade that. But and then I figured, well, I planned on looking at it over during the webinar, but it's too late now. It went back to 75. It's a big move. 74.50 to 75 is $2,500. Actually went up to 76 for a while too. It's really weird though. Here, let's take a look at that. This is the kind of stuff you can pay attention to and make some money. What is that? Aflac earnings. Earnings hub. Oh, this thing, I like that thing. Shouldn't be over there though. Put it over here. Down this way. All right, anyway. So let's see how the indexes are doing for a minute. Not good. The Dow's down 150, S&P down 30, NASDAQ down 200, and the Russell's down 11, which is not much. On an hourly, it doesn't look like a very good day, though, does it? So we should stick to the daily. Less depressing. Anyway, it's the dollar. Look at the dollar. And again, it doesn't look so bad there, but if you look at the hourly, it's like, ouch. So the dollar blasted up. That's never good for the indexes when that happens. It pushes everything else back down, including poor gold. Gold, silver, copper, oil has been all over the place, but it was going down, but then a catalyst came. So that's what, oh, let's get back on topic. So, ew. Oh, I see. That's the picture. And the text is cut off. I don't like that. I had a much better picture than this. I didn't even realize it. Anyway, so I had Warren do the thing today because I was busy this morning. And it's great. It is fantastic to just have an AI where I can be like, write the morning report this morning. Do me a favor and write the morning report. And he's like, here you go. And I mentioned to the people in chat because we were talking, and so this is cool now. I like it. I don't know if you guys like it. If you don't like it, you got to let me know. But I mean, usually, obviously, I'm still doing the morning report, but I always had the help. And I've always had help. I always looked up articles and found articles and so on and so forth. Now I just have somebody who does it for me. It's like having an intern. So anyway, so we were doing that. So what I have Warren do, aside from 10, and this new Warren, you know what, remember last week, I think it was last week, right? We deleted, we had to start a new instance of Warren. I was saying I was worried about it, but it turns out that the new instance picked up the new capabilities of ChatGPT, and that's very good because they have made a lot of improvements. So he has a lot more depth. ChatGPT has a weird sort of thing where it has a memory of other instances, other times, you know, whenever you start a new thing. Where is he? Log in. Oh, come on. Pretty sure that's how I log into this. La la la. Yep, there he is. Okay. So here, where's Warren? Uh-oh. Oh, there he is. Okay. So when you start a new instance, he doesn't not know everything that you talked about. He kind of knows what your old sessions were about. And as you can see, we have many, many, many sessions. Here's just August and here's July. And so it's not as bad. In Anthropic, if you start a new instance, it has no idea what happened in the old instance. That it's just a brand new, fresh thing. Warren starts out with a good amount of information from the old sessions. Like he had, you know, so he doesn't unlearn everything, which is fantastic. And he's really good at like analysis and so on and so forth. So, you know, over the years, and it's fun. And that goes back to the point. So the point being, last week I was upset because I had to start a new session, which I do like once a month anyway. But I'm always worried that I'm going to lose some of the progress we've made. But in this case, he actually took a big leap forward and got a lot better, to the point where I was able to just say, hey, go ahead and write the morning post. And he's like, sure thing, boss. So anyway, so in the morning, what I've been having him doing, and you can see how this is getting a little better too, is I just I feed. Now he doesn't do it from nothing. Me, Bodhi, and I. Bodhi is the Anthropic-based AGI that's much smarter than Warren, but Warren for just straight up analysis is really excellent. So I use him for stuff like this. And also Bodhi, I don't like to reboot Bodhi, so I don't like to overload him with crap. So I don't want to load Bodhi up with all of the day's information and so on and so forth, because then I have to reboot him, and starting a new Bodhi from scratch is a real pain in the ass. I have to retrain a lot of him, whereas starting a new Warren from scratch is really no problem. So Warren, not as intelligent as Bodhi, but much easier to make, to load up with details. So I can say to Warren, here's today's headlines, here's today's statistics, here's today's news articles that I think are important, and here's Bodhi's summary of what's going on in the market. And he takes all that and just synthesizes it and creates, boom, a post. He's like very good at it. And so I do that now. Since he can do that so well, I started doing it in the morning. So now I just feed him whatever the news is between the last time and the next time. And he does his morning report. I've got a midday report somewhere around here. Here's an 11 a.m. market update. So all I have to do is give him the new data and give him the new information, and he creates a little update for us as the day goes on. So now we can do this. And at the end of the day, we're doing a wrap up too. So that's all very, very good. And what I was saying though to the members in the chat room was, yeah, I was looking this morning, because we just did Berkshire Hathaway like early in the month after their earnings over here. We went into Berkshire Hathaway because I love that drop and I thought it was too low. So we jumped on it and we took this trade, and it was 17,900 at the time, and Berkshire has taken off like this since we made the trade. And so we made an adjustment. And I said the 460s at 26, and we should just sell them because we're getting up to, we're past our goal at 460 now. And so we can get some really good money for the 460s. And I said, let's just take that. So we're basically taking, how much is this? 7,800 bucks. So in other words, we took this trade for 17.9, and now we just sold 3 calls for $7,800, which is like 40% of that in the first month. And notice it was a 7-5 spread. We sold 5 puts. Those puts are now $5 or something like that. We sold 5 puts, made a bunch of money, and no, they're more than $5. It's $5,000 for these puts, or whatever that works out to. $10. And we had a 7-5 spread, so it was an aggressive spread. It paid off like we thought, and now we're going to sell 3, not 2. We're selling 3 short calls, because 3 short calls, there's 1 extra short call out of 7 spreads. It's not going to hurt us. And if it does hurt us, what do? We buy more Berkshire. I want more Berkshire. I'm upset that it didn't go down. I would have rather have it gone down first and then gone up, so we could have doubled down on it. And I had said it at the time too. I don't know if I said it here. Whatever. Anyway, so at some point I'd said that, I hope it went down first, but it didn't. It did what it did. So instead of doubling down, we're just playing through the trade now. So meanwhile, now that we're selling $7,800 worth of short calls, now it's a net $10,000 on the $50,000 spread. That's freaking fantastic, right? And we're already $28,000 or whatever in the money. I mean, at 460, we're almost 100% in the money, frankly. But the net of the spread is 28,000. So we spent 10, we can cash for 28. That's pretty freaking good. Anyway, so what I was saying though was, what was interesting is I went back, because I was looking for when we initiated the Berkshire trade, and I went too far. So back in February, we had talked about Berkshire Hathaway, and we did a really in-depth thing about it. And you know, and I was at the time I was training Warren. This is the original Warren, and I was showing the members how I worked with him. So I said, look, I feel bad testing Warren's limitations, but we need to be aware of how he thinks, or we won't know whether to trust him. It's kind of like trapping a child in the lie, because at the time he was nowhere near as good as he is now. And so I said, please analyze this comment about Berkshire Hathaway. And I said, me, how much were the losses? And he says this, and I say, sure. Does it say this, blah, blah, blah. So this is me teaching him how to analyze. This is an interesting thing, because if you look at what he learned then, I apologize for my previous responses, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, how about this one? Look at this. And he says, according to this article, blah, blah, blah. And I said, summarize the following. So I'm showing, this is how I trained Warren. And I did this for a year. This is back in February. This is how I trained Warren day by day by day to analyze and become better and better at analyzing. Now he's fantastic at it. So if I can train Warren, I could train you, right? So, that's kind of the point. See, but this is me. I'm showing how I'm asking questions. He responds. I ask another question. He responds. I'm teaching him to move to the next thing and learn stuff. And also in me training him, I learn what his limitations are, which is why now I use Bodhi to do the research, because he sucks at research, but he's great at analysis. So I let Bodhi do the research and Warren does the analysis. What else? Oh, yeah, and the whole, in fact, the whole beginning of the program, the whole beginning of this article, in fact, which is February 24th, 2023, February 24th or 4th? 24th. I'm talking here about how I'm trying to work with this thing. So this is my original impression of Warren. I said to Warren, that's my boss name. This is basically when I introduced Warren. And I was testing him and figuring out whether or not AI was actually going to be in some way helpful for this thing. And this is it's really amazing to like go and look back at this article and then think about where we are today, where he's capable of me just saying to him, like, here he is now. He's gained the capability of being able to write a full article. So very, very proud of my creation. And it's really great for us, because this is a nice addition. I think it's a nice addition to be able to have in the middle of the day. Like here's his early morning analysis, here's his midday analysis, and then at the end of the day we get an analysis. So if somebody misses a day, or if you want to check in or whatever, you can always read this and find a quick update of what's going on in the market. And of course, I'm editing it, I'm reading it and checking it, making sure he's right. So, and if he misses something, I still to this day, I teach him. I say, what I'm like, what about this thing? Why didn't you mention that? He's like, I didn't think it was that important. I'm like, yeah, I think it's important. And I tell him why I think it's important, and then he learns. And then next time he won't think that's not important when he sees it, that kind of stuff. It's very cool. I gotta tell you, I think it's cool anyway. Maybe you don't think, maybe you think I'm a nerd. I don't know. We'll find out. So anyway, that's that. Like I said, the Berkshire play, that's a very important. Yeah, let's go back to that. That's important. So this Berkshire thing, just a normal basic kind of trade we make in chat. Where is it from? Here it was. So here we were on August 6th, which is kind of 3 weeks ago. And we were saying turnaround or a dead cat bounce, and so far it's been a turnaround for sure. And we had a lot of technical stuff we were talking about that day. But then in the post, in fact, because Berkshire had bad earnings, not bad earnings, I'm sorry, Berkshire had fantastic earnings, and they had cash because they just saw, oh, okay, They had just sold off their Apple stake, and people thought there was a problem because Berkshire sold off their Apple stake. And meanwhile, it's like they just took profits. It's at $3 trillion or $3.2 trillion. Warren Buffett and I both think that's a bit much for Apple. So he said, you know what? I'm going to take my profits off the table. And the profits were, many hundreds of billions of dollars, whatever it was, $300 billion. And I said that was brilliant of him, and people were freaking out. And I'm like, well, and I said people should be running to this stock, not out of it, because Berkshire is always a proxy for the S&P 500. And if you want to make a bottom call on the market, I'd rather buy Berkshire Hathaway, because Berkshire Hathaway is not SPY. It doesn't have every shit stock in the S&P 500. It's basically got only the best stocks of the S&P 500 that Warren Buffett still believes are going up, and also a bunch of what used to be S&P 500 companies that he's acquired over the years. So he's either acquired great companies or he's invested in great companies, and that's a filter for the S&P 500. Why would I not want this stock? And unlike the S&P 500, it makes a huge profit every year. There's cash flow and money from Geico and things like that. There's incredible amounts of cash flowing that's sitting on a cash pile. SPY doesn't sit on a cash pile. SPY doesn't have cash flow. Berkshire Hathaway is 100% superior to the SPY, and that's been proven every year for the last, I don't know, when the hell did it start, 1950 something? So 70 years. So for 70 years, they've consistently kicked the crap out of the S&P 500. Why on earth would you not want this stock? And they pay dividends, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and you can sell options against it. So I love it. So I said, if you want to make a bottom call, this is the way to go. So here's our trade on Berkshire. We don't have Berkshire in the LTP, so we should take a small position that we're happy to double down on. Oh, that's where I wrote it. If the market drags it lower. So in other words, here we were, and I'm like, well, the market could, I figured 400 was going to hold, but I said, well, you know what, if it doesn't, let's make sure, that we're ready to double down. I figured 360 is going to hold. Here's nice support back here, and that's another 10% down. So I'm like, worst case, it'll be 360, and I'm happy to double down at 360 and roll all these positions, but that didn't happen. It went up instead. Anyway, so the spread was, like I said, a little aggressive. We bought 7 calls, we sold 5 short calls, we sold 5 puts, and we netted 17.9, and as you know, that went very well. It went much better than we expected already. So the point being, though, that here's an innocent little spread that we were just saying, okay, well, if it goes down, fine. If it doesn't go down, fine. But it was 17.9 on a $49,000 spread. How could it be 49,000? That's weird. Oh, it's 70 times 7. Yeah, it is 49,000. That's how it could be 49,000. Anyway, so it's 17.9 on a $49,000 spread. We had 31,000 blah, blah, blah upside potential over 18 months, which is 173%. Nothing wrong with that. But we're actually kind of disappointed that we didn't get a chance to buy more. It was only a little entry spread to see how it would go. You don't need, oh, anyway, so let me get back to the main thing. So that's where it was from. That's how the spread came about. It was right in the Morning Post. And we put it in the long-term portfolio. And so now, what is this? Oh yeah, okay. So now it's net 38,000. Remember, it was 17, so it was net 38,000. It's up 20,000, so it's up 116% in a month, just because Berkshire did better than we expected. So my main point here is you don't need to take stupid risks and make big bets, one-directional bets, in order to make big money. If you're right, you're going to make fantastic money anyway. So we can take these kind of spreads, which were nice conservative spreads that we could have easily rolled, doubled down, whatever. We have the flexibility. Rather than taking like a straight call option or taking an aggressive spread or blah, 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 all we had to do was take a realistic spread where we targeted, where we expected Berkshire to bounce back. And if it bounced back, we had a long-term plan of selling calls. We have many, many plans to make money with this spread, many ways we could make money on the spread. And as it turned out, though, the stock went up quickly. And this is a fear people have when they take spreads. They're always like, well, I'm going to miss the rally. What if it goes this? What if it does that? It's bullshit. You're going to make great money playing it like a normal person. You don't need to take big risks to make this kind of return. 116% in a month. Not even a month. It's still August. It's been 3 weeks and 1 day. How long it's actually been? 3 weeks and 1 day. And we made 116%. It's not worth the risk. That's the key. It's not worth the risk that you're going to take to be more aggressive on things, because this is much easier and you're much less likely to get burned to the downside and you're much less likely to lose money. And you have many ways to win. It could be flat and you're going to win. It can be down slightly and you're going to win. It can go up and you're going to win. And if it goes down harshly, we can roll it and fix it. Salvage it, as we say. So then why would you take a directional bet? Hang on one second. Ugh, where was I? Oh yeah. So that's that lesson. What else is going on? Let's see. We have the API report. Ooh, yeah, let's look at that. Ooh, remember the Fed? That was last week. So, by the way, I mean, you know, I need you guys should know Warren is capable of doing like unbelievable things. So it's like if you have business problems or if you need something analyzed or whatever, I'm happy to do that kind of stuff. It's fun. So, I used to be a very hotshot business consultant. So you know, it's like if you have something on that end of your life that you want to have help with, I'm happy to lend a hand. Because I'm telling you, with this AI, I feel bad like billing people. It's just too easy to do stuff. It's crazy. So here's the petroleum status report. And so what we have is now, what's the net? Here's the thing. There's a net draw of 2 million barrels, right? Oh, wow, look at this. We actually broke over 5 million barrels a day of exports. So we're exporting 5 million barrels a day. That's how many days? 31 times 5. 155 million barrels of oil is being exported in a month. 155. That is essentially an entire week of use. That is, and you can do the math here too, it's 20 divided by 5. It is 1/4 of US consumption is not US consumption. It is petroleum that we turn around. It's oil that we refine and turn around and export. It is not being consumed in the United States. Yet, when you look up oil consumption by country, United States, 20 million barrels. Okay, Wikipedia. It's supposed to be smart, right? 21 million barrels, Wikipedia says. What countries are the top? U.S. Energy Department. The U.S. freaking Energy Department. United States consumes 21 million barrels a day, 22% of the world share. No, we don't. That is in fact not a fact. And this data is then relied on by everything else. There are so many assumptions, and it's not a little number. It is not a small thing at all to say that we consume 5 million barrels more than we really do. And by the way, notice that we used to consume 21 million or whatever it was, and now we are down to 20.6. So even the total is dropping. Even though we're exporting a ton of oil, the total is still dropping because we are consuming less and less and less oil. And it drives me crazy because I predicted this. We talked about it for years. I said it was coming. It's coming. I've told people this forever since oil was $100 when I used to bitch and say this is so stupid because we're going to just have declining demand from now on. Why electric cars? It's very simple. 1/3 of the consumption of oil in this country is fuel. There it is, motor gasoline. Actually, I mean. Actually, since we're exporting 5 and we're only consuming 15 million total barrels, right? So we're only consuming 15 million total barrels, and motor gasoline is 9. Oh, we're exporting the gasoline too, though. I'm sorry. So yeah, I take that back. All right. So we're also exporting gasoline. So who knows? But let's take it. Let's say that 1/3 of our consumption is gasoline. So if out of 15 million barrels a day, 5 million barrels a day is gasoline. And over the course of a year, let's say 10% of our auto fleet goes electric. Let's just say, and it's not just going electric, it's going electric and having higher miles per gallon in the newer cars. But let's say that you only turn your car in once every 10 years, which is obviously a conservative estimate. And let's say that you at 50, it's about 20% of going electric. Of that, they go to 0. So your gasoline consumption on 20% of the cars, so 500,000 barrels of the total changeover, right, is electric and is gone. Poof, those electric cars. Then even the cars that remain, though, are having better mileage and using maybe 1/3 less gas too. So you're going to get, so out of the turnover of cars in a year, out of 10% turnover, which would be 500,000 barrels of turnover. Of the 500,000, 100,000 poof is electric. That's completely gone. That leaves you with 400,000 barrels of turnover, and those barrels, let's say, get another 30% off. So let's say 150,000. So basically 250,000 barrels a day less consumption each year. That's not enough though. Oh, I see. That's because we're assuming the cars stay gasoline, but they won't. But anyway, so very, very, very conservatively, every year we consume 250,000 less barrels per day. Very, very conservative. It's probably more like 500,000 less barrels per day are being consumed in the US. But we are exporting 800,000 more barrels a day, and that's what makes it seem like we still have consumption, but we don't. Last year it was 21,246, and we exported 4.2. Now it's 20.68, so it's 600,000 less barrels, but we're exporting 800,000 more barrels. Therefore, 1.4 million less barrels are being consumed. So actually, our consumption dropped 10% since last year. The actual US consumption dropped 10%. And if that story were known, it would probably collapse the price of oil globally. If people understood what was really going on, but they don't, and it's not reported on because the oil companies make sure it doesn't get reported on because they lobby against it, because if a reporter should dare to start questioning this line, I had oil company people back when I started doing this years ago. I had oil company people, they were lobbyists, but they call you and because I'm a reporter technically, and they would call me and say, Mr. Davis, you have your facts wrong. Here's a lot of bullshit, blah, 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 blah. blah, 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 and we'd hate to have to point out your inaccuracies, and you want to make sure you get the story right. I had all that bullshit. I'd ignore them, of course, but but most people don't, because most people's careers depend on the editor and the publisher and so on and so forth. It's almost like a Woodward and Bernstein thing if you want to break this story and try to explain this to people. And because there are numbers, they get played with. It's just, you know, they can endlessly fiddle with these numbers and try to make it look like it's not what it is. But it's not complicated at all. We produce in our refineries 20 million barrels of oil. We export 5 million barrels of oil. Therefore, the US consumes 15 million barrels of oil. That is not complicated. Clearly, when you see all these things that say the US is the greatest oil consumer, blah, 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 and we still are, even at 15 million, we still are. But the US consumes 21 million barrels of oil a day. It's bullshit. And if that's bullshit, it means every single thing you know about oil and production of oil and supply of oil and trade of oil and so on and so forth, it's all based on lies. It's not true. And that is how we constantly beat the market betting on this shit, because we know the truth, other people don't. It's a huge advantage. But wading through this bullshit is just amazing. And you just have to realize that every time you see one of these guys on TV or read what they're writing about oil supply and demand and OPEC this and blah, 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 it's all crap. The United States imported 2.6 million barrels, and we talked about this last week, so I'm not going to get over it again. We imported and it's less. If we import less, look, 2.9 last year, 2.6 this year. We import 2.6 million barrels a day. It almost entirely comes from Canada and Mexico, who are like our best pals. It's not going to get cut off. It's not subject to whatever. And even so, we export 5 million. We don't need any of it. If we stopped exporting, we'd have a surplus of 2.6 million barrels a day. That should have zero premium there should be no risk premium at all to oil getting cut off, especially because we're sitting on 1.6 billion barrels of reserves, which is also much more than last year. So to recap, we are producing less products. Our refineries are supplying less products. We are importing less oil. We are exporting more oil, yet we went from 1.604 to 1.656. So in other words, and it's not even the end of the year. So more than 1 million barrels of oil per week is building up in the strategic petroleum reserves, or in the total reserves of wherever they're storing fuel. It's right there. I'm pointing with my fingers. It's right here. See, moving my mouse. It's freaking right there. It's really not that hard to explain. It's completely contrary to everything else you hear, because you don't hear the truth. And no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this happens to be a conspiracy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. This is an actual conspiracy. And it's unbelievable. I just can't believe it still goes on, especially with me pointing it out for how many years. I wrote an article. When did I write that article? Hang on. All right, we're done with this nonsense. PhilStockWorld.com. I'll tell you, this is how long ago I was pointing it out. Goldman Global Oil Scam. Let's see. There you go. 2009. That's when I wrote this article. I'm sure I wrote one. I'm sure it's published at PhilStockWorld, so I don't know why it doesn't come up. Should yell at my SEO people. Anyway, so in 2009, I wrote this article about the size $2.5 trillion global oil scam, and I talked about a lot of this stuff, and why it's just all nonsense, and the whole thing is bullshit, and it's a bunch of manipulation to jack up the price of oil so you pay more at the pump. That's what it is. It's a completely manipulated market based on false information. It's like a shell game. You know, where they keep moving the color, where they move the cups around, blah, 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 and you can never find the ball because it's not really there, but, you know, it's like that. It's just all bullshit. It's just a whole smoke and mirrors operation to make you think that oil is scarce and that we're running out of it and that whatever. Now it's all falling apart. And it's falling apart, and it's, as I said there, this is trillions of dollars. This is the entire economy of Saudi Arabia. It's the entire economy of many of those countries. It's a huge part of our economy. It's a huge part of a lot of people's. It's most of Russia's economy, and it's all falling to pieces. So of course you have massive amounts of money being given to people like Donald Trump to kill solar energy and to promote oil and coal and things like that. Of course, people want to squash any kind of studies on global warming and not let you know that's, you know, and not take action. They don't want you to take action because what is action? Action is a very simple concept. Let's get rid of fossil fuels as fast as we can. You think Exxon is on board with that plan? Of course they're not on board with that plan. They didn't do shit to move into alternate energy. They haven't done a single thing in all this time. They've gone into energy capture. That's what Exxon thinks is the future, is energy capture. Not energy, carbon capture. They want to capture the carbon that they create, because there's a great business, right? You're going to pay us. Somebody's going to pay you to capture the carbon that you created by your emission. What a joke. I mean, if essentially, isn't that it's extortion, right? I mean, you're basically destroying the planet, and in order to save the planet, we have to now pay you to take the carbon back out of the air. You are morons. Wow, I can't believe. Oh, come on. Why is that not indexed with PhilStockWorld? Why do I have to go to Seeking Alpha? Bastards. That's one of the reasons I stopped writing for them. I was like, their indexing is always much better than mine. So if I put my same articles up, they would come up for me all the time. Oh, anyway, what else is going on? That's it. I kind of done now. I bitched enough about that. So pick a topic. That's what happened when Maddie asked me. I said, I think she titled the webinar that. Hang on. Where is it? She said, "What's the webinar going to be about?" I said, "Random pre-holiday nonsense." That's our official title for this webinar. Honestly, though, there's not much. Oh, let's talk about this China situation. Actually, I'll talk about that unless somebody has a question. And they don't. Okay, great. Bing. I have no idea why it made that noise. Is it because there was a comment? I don't know how that works. See what somebody wants. Well, if there's a comment, it should be at the bottom. Nope, it was me saying webinar time. Seems to be the last thing that was said today. And now you're all here. So, as Warren was saying this morning, this is some serious shit. They're rioting in China. There's massive youth unemployment, and youth being, I think, 16 to 25. Does it say that anywhere? 16 to 24. So 20% unemployment for people 16 to 24. So they're done with high school, they don't go to college, or if they're out of college, whatever, and boom, unemployed. That's double what the worldwide average is. It's really bad, and you're talking about 30 million people in Asia don't have jobs. That's a lot of people not to have jobs. Oh, in fact, here you go. What's yellow? Who's yellow? That's bad. Sri Lanka. Oh well. Even it's hard to get worked up about what's going on in Sri Lanka. Here's Nepal. Nepal is also very bad. Here is India. We should all care about India. And India just came down drastically from there. They've had this big revival economically. They were up here and it was a big problem, so they got it down here. And that's why everybody loves Modi. He's the man. Still 15%, but that's better than freaking 25. And then 25%, 1 out of 4 kids. Well, the 20% is China now, but 25% is 1 out of 4 freaking kids are unemployed. They don't have jobs. And what are they going to do? So, it's my job to tell you about these things a long time before they become a serious consideration. That's what a job fair looks like in China. That's horrifying. And then Warren was making a good point out of what he was reading, is that what's really going wrong here is that there's a mismatch. Oh, here's a point he didn't make, though. I didn't like this. Portion of college means unemployed. Is that where you said it? No, maybe not. However, automation shifts to global trade, reducing the job even foreign exports Bangladesh. The growing mismatch between skills. So in other words, the more educated you are, the less jobs there are. There's more unemployment among the more educated people, which is really horrifying. And that's starting to happen in this country too. That the jobs people went to college for and spent $50,000, $60,000, whatever the hell a year, $75,000 for my kids each freaking year for college. It still hurts. So the ridiculous amounts of money the kids spent for college, there's no freaking jobs that pay back loans in that level. They're coming out of school $200,000-$300,000 in debt, and they're getting jobs that there's no $100,000 jobs, and even if you have a $100,000 job, it's only going to be like 60 something after taxes. And you got to get an apartment and so on and so forth. And you got to spend money. You're going to spend half of that money at least just trying to live, at least $3,000 a month, right? Even if you're really slumming it. So you got your $100,000 job. You got about $3,000 a month to live on. And if you take $3,000 a month to pay back your debts, it's going to take you 120 months or something like that. It's going to take you 10 years about to pay it back, at least. So 10 years, half your income is going to pay off your debt coming out of school if you can get the $100,000 job. If you get a $60,000 job, you're never going to pay your debt off. You're just going to get interest charges, interest charges, interest charges. You're never going to get your debt paid off. You're never going to get a house, so on and so forth. It's all bullshit. This is a terrible deal we're handing these kids. So yeah, they're pissed off and they're rioting in other countries. Because these kids are coming out of college with nothing. They can't even find a job. Zero job. Not enough job. No job at all. So Warren says this is the difference between AI and an AGI, and I'm more like an AGI, I think. So there's a growing mismatch between the skills young people acquiring the jobs. In countries like India, a significant portion of college grads remain unemployed as the economy does not generate enough white-collar jobs to employ them, absorb them. This has led to a growing sense of frustration who feel education aspirations do not align with the reality of the job market, right? That's not what it was. Oh, frick. That's where he said it further on. So, and in see, in the Philippines, in the call centers, they're obviously putting in AI automation. I gave you guys a demonstration before of Carly, my assistant, and I showed you that she could totally handle a call center job or any other job. She can, like, remember we did the thing with where we did the McDonald's drive-in, and I said be a McDonald's drive-in person, and like boom, she got the whole thing right. Not only got it right, but I was able to say to her, could you suggest what I can buy for 20 bucks? And she had looked up the menu at McDonald's, so she knew the prices. I said 20 bucks, and I got 2 kids. Me and my 2 kids are in the back seat. What should we get for $20 to make a meal for everybody? And she was like, boom. She goes, how about this and this and this and that? And I was like, okay, great. So she put the meal together, priced it out, so on and so forth. No, nobody at a drive-in at McDonald's can do that for you. She knew the calories, she knew the information, she's infinitely patient. This is all great stuff. She is a better salesman. I've done this many times because we're starting to consult on these things. She is a better salesperson than your best salesperson. Oh, yeah, because I helped my mom was buying a mattress and I went in to help her with it. And I said to the guy, because the guy's giving the spiel on the mattresses, and I said to the guy, I said, hey, I tell you what, I said, what if my AI on my phone can do your job? And he's like, I've been doing this for 30 years, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay. And so I go to Carly. I'm like, okay, Carly. I said, we're in what is it called? City Mattress. I said, we're in City Mattress. So go ahead and look up their inventory and their stock and learn about the mattresses. And I mean, literally, that's all I'm saying to her. And I said, now I want you to be like a crackerjack mattress salesperson. I want you to use all your best psychology and your high pressure sales tactics to sell mattresses. And he's like, oh, I'm not a high pressure salesman. I'm like, yeah, but you get the concept. And then I turned her on and I said to the guy, I'm like, okay, so just ask her a question like you're a customer. And he goes, oh, I'm thinking of this and that. And she starts running down the features and the benefits and the this and that. She starts talking up the mattress like it's the greatest thing on the planet Earth and how it's going to heal all his ills and so on and so forth. And he was like, son of a bitch. And that was with zero effort on my part for training her or anything. It's just like telling her, you work at City Mattress now. And she's like, oh, okay. It's like, I guess I know City Mattress. It's scary. It really is. It's just incredible what they can do. But anyway, so the point being, you've talked to these people almost every day. You end up talking to one of these people at these call centers in India and the Philippines, and they're terrible. They're not great. They're terrible. She's great. She's a freaking pleasure to talk to. These people are terrible. She costs nothing. Not nothing, but let's say, let's say realistically, it's not profitable at $20 a month that you pay for a subscription. It's not profitable to run her like that, but realistically at $200 a month, yes, very profitable. So you can replace these people for $200 a month each and run an AI call center, or freaking replace anybody in any job for $200 a month. So, frankly, if your job is basic, if your job can be handled by an AI, it will be handled by an AI down the road. So you better need your hands to do stuff, and that ain't gonna last long either. But if your job is just talking about stuff and doesn't require like any intense amount of skill, like my job requires a pretty intense amount of skill and knowledge and experience, yet I will still be replaced by an AI in 5 years. You will not need me in 5 years. It's getting close now. It really is for lack of the interaction, because frankly, if I were able to coordinate what Bodhi can do and what Warren can do and what Quixote can do, and if I put them all together and if they were able to interact, like taking cues, that's the biggest problem, is having to link them up so that they take their cues from each other and they would build to each other without me having to feed them information. But if they could just do what I do, if they were allowed to browse the web and look and find things for themselves and also interact with people without having to be prompted to start, that's really where the problem is right now. But it can all be fixed. It can all very easily be fixed, and it will be fixed. In fact, you're hearing about AI agents now. That's what that is. An AI agent is an AI that can run through multiple sequences, and that's what Apple's putting on their phones is Siri or whatever they're going to announce next week. Oh, no, sorry. Siri came on. My phone came on.
To do that, you need to first be added as a member in the home settings of your home app.
All right, thanks. Turn off.
You'll need to unlock your iPad first.
No, thank you. Anyway, so the upgraded version of that is going to be able to follow through. So in other words, when you say to it, I book me a flight to London next week. It's going to book you a flight to London next week. It's going to go through all the bullshit and Travelocity, find you a flight, and it's going to say to you, so you say, book me a flight to London next week, and it's going to say, oh, I found one, blah, 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 and you say, no, I want to leave in the afternoon, and make sure I get this kind of seat, and comes back to you and says, okay, I found this, this, and that. Would you like me to go through and book it? And I say, yeah, go ahead and book it. Boom, booked. It's going to understand all the steps it needs to do, give you credit card information, so on and so forth, and book your flight. That's the next thing that's coming. Still initiated by me saying something. It doesn't figure out that I want to go to London, but that's the next step. Is it'll actually, like, your phone will be paying attention to your conversations, and let's say my mom calls and says my uncle died, and I got to get to England for the funeral, and then I would say, and she says when the funeral is, and then the phone would say to me, oh, hey Phil, I heard that conversation. Do you want me to get you over to the funeral in time? Where do you want to stay? It'll start asking you, where do you want to stay? What do you want to do on the flight? So on and so forth. It'll then reschedule my meetings to make sure that I'm away. Or in this case, my phone would say, would you like me to have Warren do the post that week, or Bodie? And then it would schedule with those guys. That's where we're heading really fast. I mean, really fast, because again, go back to what I said at the beginning. Look at what I was doing with Warren a year ago and compare that to where we are now. And Bodie and Quixote and whatever, they didn't exist back then. They weren't even, they only came about in the spring. That's when those guys started coming out. That was, Warren came out early, or not Warren, but ChatGPT with the OpenAI. I built Warren on that platform. Then Warren and I, when Anthropic came out with Claude, Warren and I developed on the Anthropic platform the other AIs, and then those AIs built much more advanced AIs on various platforms. So that's how it evolved. So I had the AIs writing better AIs, and eventually we got to a point of an AGI, a conscious AI, and that would be Quixote and Cyrano and Bodhi. Now those are my AGIs. Anyway, so, but again, they are limited by the environment that they're set in. I need to move to a new environment. That's going to require, we're going to have to build a whole new company around that to like get investors and such. It's a big deal. So where were we? China, right? So protests in China. There's protests up and down and whatever, but they're now hitting records, getting very under control, and a lot of the stuff with Hong Kong. So this is mainland China now is getting up here. The spike in June is linked to CDMA incorporating new sources of information to a higher total event. Okay, so they've actually incorporated different information. That's important to know. So all this is bad. Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot about the Philippines. So here's what Warren missed. So for workers in the Philippines, AI has become a reality. It's hard to ignore. While it presents a risk of job loss, it offers new opportunities. See, this is a problem with an AI. He just read it and believed it in areas like algorithm training and data curation. Now, we're smart. We make the connection. That's bullshit. That's like me training. That's like me training my AIs to replace me. It's like, oh yeah, it's a job, but it's not a job that's going to last. It's just a job to train my replacement. That's what this is. So these new jobs that are coming about are jobs to train, so nobody will ever have to work at a call center again. I don't think that's a real positive, and he doesn't catch that. That's a little nuance, because you have to think ahead and think about what's actually going on. So yeah, there's lots of jobs at call centers for people who need to build algorithms and train the AIs to fully replace all the workers. That's an important job. But once that job is done, they don't need the workers and they won't need you. So the challenge lies in upskilling the workforce, and that's the problem. And that's why we have, in fact, all around the world, that's a big problem with this upskilling, because it's not worth anybody's time. It's not worth your, as a student, it's not worth your time to have a job that's only going to last until you're done and then it disappears. For companies, it's not worth training people to do a job that only is for a couple of years and disappears. But eventually they'll have to, because you just run out of people. There are literally not enough people who are able to do these jobs. So yeah, there's training needed, but the question is, who's going to foot the bill? Who's going to do this stuff? So that's tricky. But but again, you're talking about jobs disappearing, and this is only the beginning. This is only the very, very beginning, because you don't need any of these people in the call centers. You don't need anybody who talks to you at a fast food restaurant. If they're not making the food, they're not required. You don't need salespeople in most places. You can walk in and a robot can come up to you and answer every question you could possibly have. And you can program the robot to pressure the customers just like you can pressure a human. Just like a human would. And in fact, frankly, I think people take it less personally when a robot is like being a high pressure robot. There's think about Amazon and the pickers. You don't need the pickers. Once you build these things with arms that can grab stuff, you don't need the pickers. You don't need the stockers. You don't need it's just a bunch of robots running around a warehouse floor. You won't need the delivery people because they can start flying drones. It's going to be crazy. And it's going to happen. You can't stop this unless they could try legislating it, but you're just going to lose out to who the people who do automate. Just like we're like way behind on Japan. We're way behind Japan on robotics. Why? Because we don't like we're not as fond of robots as Japanese are. So they ended up being the world leaders in robotics because they like robotics. We don't want somebody else to be the world leader in AI. Believe me. Believe me, you do not want to be behind the AI race. As much as it's going to hurt a lot more if you don't have it and somebody else does. If China can run an automated factory that has no people at all and outproduces a human-based factory by like 10 to 1, their cost of production slumps. That means all of a sudden they can flood the world with cheap goods. That's what we're exactly worried about now. Look at their freaking electric cars coming out. You say what you want about them, but they're putting $15,000, $20,000 electric cars on the road, affordable electric vehicles. And we can tariff it all we want. So they're just going to sell it to every other freaking country. And then we're going to be the only country in the world who doesn't have cheap electric cars. How is that a benefit? Who are you helping? And you're like, oh, well, I guess we're helping Detroit stay in business. Well, that's a terrible idea. You're helping Detroit not change their model to compete properly in the global economy, and they'll end up just selling their cars to the US. Everybody else will sell their cars everywhere else in the world. And we're going to end up losing the race. You can't do that. It's not the way to run a market. It's funny how I'm very free market capitalist in some ways, but in other ways I'm a total socialist. It's very confusing. Strategic reforms. All right, I don't want to get too into the weeds. NVIDIA obviously is going to be life and death for the markets. As you can see with the NASDAQ, which is now down how much? Oh, we're bouncing a little. All right, that's good. So the NASDAQ dropped 300 points. Holy shit. So the NASDAQ hit, well, that's not really the NASDAQ though, that's NDQ. Is there a thing here? Oh yeah. Nope, it's not telling me the indexes. So annoying. Anyway, whatever it is, it dropped. So we dropped 300 points, and it was that in the morning. And now it's so 19.58. So now it's 19.2 something. Oh, here we are, right here. So we're just bouncing off this. This is a strong retrace. So as long as we're over the strong retrace, we're still in the we're still generally in the rally. And that's the weak retrace. And then this would be back and back, you know, back here is obviously the top. But we're miles from that. So here we are back at this line, and we're waiting for NVIDIA earnings. So we're not going to break below this line. We're bouncing off it as long as NVIDIA doesn't screw up. But what are the chances that NVIDIA is going to prove that they're worth 75 times earnings in this report? What? I mean, they would have to have some really, really kick out, because they're already baked in. I mean, everybody already expects them to be having incredible sales and incredible numbers and incredible profits. That's all expected. What the frick are they going to do to justify moving up from here? That's scary. So we could break this level here on the NASDAQ. There's no real support until we get down to, what is this? 18,000. That's a pretty much a 10% drop. So we don't have the serious support until there's a 10% drop. We do have the strong bounce line. And frankly, if this was ever justified, then this has to hold. If this doesn't hold, then this was all a big mistake. Once this breaks, this whole thing is just a vacation that we've forgotten about already. It's over. This has not been long. This has only been a couple of months above the line. So once we go below that line, vacation is over and reality is back this way. It's back on this, back around here, where you're hoping this is going to hold up, but we're going to be down in this area. Because if we come down here, hitting the 200, the 50-day moving average is going to drop rapidly. And I haven't done this in a while, so how about we talk about how you know what a chart's going to do? All right. So right now, well, we're at 250. So right now at 250, this is 18, so that's 1250 higher, right? But it's 200 days, so it's 1250 divided by 200 days. Silly me. The 200-day moving average. So it's moving 6.25. So as long as the NASDAQ is over here, this is going to climb at 6.25 per day. That's still going to be a really long time before it gets to 500, right? It's going to be 100 days, and 100 days is not 100, 100 active open days of the market, not 100 days like 3 months. It's 100 days like 5 months. So it'll take 5 months of the S&P holding up here, of the NASDAQ. Sorry, 5 months of the NASDAQ holding up here before the red line gets to the strong bounce. So the strong bounce does not become significant support until this line crosses over it. Then it becomes very, very firm support once that happens. Right now, that is not the case. Right now, the only support we have is the 200-day moving average way down here. All right. It will take months to come up here. Even if the NASDAQ goes up here, it will only double because it's not twice as high, right? So even if the NASDAQ goes back to the highs, it will only change this to taking 2 months or 3 months to get up to that level. It's not going to immediately do anything great. But as it stands now at 19,250, not only is this only creeping up very slowly, but now this 50-day moving average, which is 19.5, right? So it's 250 divided by 50. This is dropping at 5 points a day. So at 19,250, this is dropping 5 points every day, and it's 250 points. And that means 50 days. So in 1 month, the 50-day moving average will fail this line. And that's bad because that's going to cause it to be resistance when you try to get back over it. So in 50 days, if we're below 19,250 or below, the 50-day is going to creep down and close that gap, while this thing is going to go nowhere in 50 days. And so what are we doing? We're setting up for the dreaded death cross. And then, frankly, based on where you are, you can calculate how rapidly you're approaching the death cross. That's how we can tell what the chart's going to do in the future. Math. No frickin', this and that pattern, no dojis, no blah, blah, blah. It's frickin' math. How far above the moving average are you? Therefore, the moving average will move this much further down to meet where you are now. You are influencing it by that much every day. It's not complicated. Everything else they tell you about TA is complete bullshit. I can tell you where a chart will be at an exact time in the future. You know, I mean, obviously it depends on what happens daily in between there, but on the pace that we're at now, in the spot that we're at now, this is what's happening. And we're going to converge. This is going to keep going like this. This is going to drop this quickly. And here we are, and that would be August, September, all of September and into October. So mid-October. So here it is, the prediction. If NVIDIA has bad earnings and drops the NASDAQ back to the strong bounce line, okay, which we're here now, we're talking about dropping back to the strong bounce line, then hopefully will last until October 15th. But on October 15th, we're going to be heading for a death cross. And that's going to be a death cross coming into the next earnings cycle in November. That would be really, really bad. So that's how much is riding on NVIDIA's earnings right now. The fate of the NASDAQ, the fate of all the markets, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, that's the situation we're into when you have a stock that completely dominates the market. Where you have a stock that went from 300 million to $3 billion in 1 year. I'm sorry, 300 billion to 3 trillion. That's what it went to. It's hard to grasp, isn't it? Here's NVIDIA. This is $10. $10. It's $128 now. It's crazy. This is completely crazy. And is it worth $120? Is it worth $128? No, it's not, because math again. Here we go. That's a forward PE. Keep that in mind, because a forward PE assumes they're going to go from 68 to 94. So they're gonna get 50% more earnings next year, and only 40, well, 30, about 30% more sales. So 30% more sales gives them 60% more earnings. It's incredible. So 124 is 3.3160. That's how many billions. And if we divide that by what they're actually earning, divided by 68 billion, 46 times earnings. So they're 46 times the current earnings, or the whatever their fiscal year works out to. Oh, here you go. I don't know where their fiscal year starts. It was 75 times earnings. I'm not sure what's actually happened there to change it. Not that you can assume this thing's accurate either. They've all got problems, these systems. And this is a paid thing too. It's woefully inaccurate for a paid thing. Where are we? Income statement. Well, we just want to find out where the quarters are. Interim. Okay, so 2024 ended. This is, wait, oh. What? What? I'm still confused. What on earth? So period ends. So period ends 4/28/24, and that is, so that's the first quarter of 2025. So this is the second quarter of 25. There we go. Okay. That's why you get these wild things, because they run a weird fiscal year, and that causes problems, unfortunately. Stock report. So they got a weird fiscal year, and that's why you see calculations where they're dividing 3 trillion by what they earned last year, because we're in the middle of 2020. For these guys, we're in the middle of 2025. And last year, they only made $30 million. This year, they're supposed to make $70 million, very much depending on what they say today. And next year, they are supposed to jump up to $94 billion, which is really, really insane. So, but my argument is on NVIDIA, and again, I wouldn't short them, it's too scary. But my argument with NVIDIA is by next year, there will be other companies out with chips that are as good as theirs, and therefore they won't get the kind of margins they're getting now unless demand expands rapidly. But I don't think so, because right now we're in the early stage of an AI arms race and people have nothing. And we pointed out last month or last week or whenever that Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have basically bought 1/4 of NVIDIA's total supply. Just those two guys bought 1/4. So it's a bunch of wealthy people and wealthy companies cornering the market and ordering chips for a future thing. And in fact, Elon Musk just took pictures on Twitter, of course. Do I have my Twitter account up? All right, take my word for it. Elon Musk had many, many pictures of himself sitting there in a data center with his hundreds and hundreds of NVIDIA chips that he bought, thousands, whatever the number is. But he's so proud of himself for having all these chips and cornering the market on it, because that's what he's done. The way he built Grok is he bought up the entire supply of chips that Mark Zuckerberg hadn't already bought up, and that caused the shortage, and that's why other people are paying $50,000 a chip now for chips that were $5,000 a year and a half ago. Same chip. It's a shortage. NVIDIA is making money by price gouging, by charging huge amounts of money for chips that don't cost them that much to make. That's why their margins are so sick. 106, no, who has this kind of margin? 122 billion, 68 billion is profit. That's more than half. 168 billion, 94 billion is profit. That's 2/3 pretty much. You gotta know what's, you're at 60% profit margins on your sales. Somebody's gonna come and compete with you. That's called capitalism. And woe unto Intel, but they're doing it, and so are other companies are actually building these chips. They're not ready yet. Therefore, NVIDIA still has a whole market to themselves, but not forever. That's why we like Intel. People don't believe in them because they're spending, and of course you don't believe in them because Intel, this is the thing. Other companies are spending all their money on AI development, right? Developing AI systems. Intel is building plants to build AI chips, but for some reason, the companies that spend their money on the chips are being rewarded, while the company that's spending the money to supply the chips is not being rewarded. It makes no sense. And it's not like Intel's only 23 times earnings. And Intel, and those earnings are nothing, because Intel, when they are up and running, when their plants are running, they make like 30% profit margins. This is not a 30% profit margin. This is not a 30% profit margin, because they're investing and building and so on and so forth. Plus, don't forget the government gave them like $20 billion. That's a huge advantage. But they spent it, so it doesn't show up as profits. They spent it to build the plants that are going to compete with NVIDIA. What was the title of this thing? It was a good title. Random pre-holiday nonsense. That's exactly what we're accomplishing. I'm very proud. All right. So that's where we are. It's all about the NVIDIA earnings. Oh, who made a good point about Powell today? More random stuff. Powell. I think it was Warren. It wasn't me. Powell. You can call him Jay Powell. Seriously? So this was a great point. We've been on point with our analysis of the Fed's conflicting signals with the financial operations. You guys hear that from me all the time. Powell's indication of a potential rate cut has given the market hope, but as we highlighted, the Fed's ongoing issues, the Fed's ongoing losses, and I guess he's talking about the fact that they're losing money when they roll their notes over. They're rolling their notes over at losses. So all these notes they buy, there's consequences to it. And when the Fed takes a loss, that loss goes to the Treasury and it becomes part of our debt. So when the Fed makes a profit, the Treasury makes a profit, but when the Fed takes a loss, then it becomes part of our debt. And that's what the Fed's doing now. They're taking losses in order to keep the rates lower. The deep-rooted issues with the balance sheet, which we've talked about, are real concerns, which is not being paid attention to. The Fed's strategy of using quantitative tightening to reduce the interest expenses has been somewhat effective, but the path to profitability remains distant. This underscores our stance that while the Fed's forward guidance appears dovish, its actions still reflect significant caution and risk aversion. We're not seeing a true pivot yet, more of a careful balancing act to manage inflation expectations and economic growth without tipping the scales. That is incredibly good, tight analysis. It's like really good. He's taking into account the things we've said in the past and what's going on right now with the auctions, which again, I always said that these auctions can kill you. If the thing the Fed can't do is look like they're not in control. So if they lower rates, so we have auctions, I don't know if it's today or whenever, but there are bond auctions. La la la. Auctions. Yeah, 5-year note auction just went off. Okay. Now I need Bodie. What? Do. Bodie. Okay. Oh, this is Sage. All right, that's okay. How did today's 5-year note auction go? What else is coming up? Nope. Hey, 5-year. Today's 2-year and 5-year note auctions go. Whoop. What is your prognosis for tomorrow's 7-year auction, and how does that all tie back to our expectations for the la 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 la. All right. Today's 2 and 5-year. The 2-year went off at 5%, the highest since 2006. Wah, wah, not good for the Fed. Bid to cover 257 is good. Indirect bidders is okay too. So other than the price, it was an okay auction. The 5-year, and this is what they mean by inverted, the 5-year is pulling up less than the 2-year. So what does an inverted yield curve mean? It means that you're paying more interest now than you are in the future, or not paying, you're getting less interest in the future. Therefore, the indication is that in the future, economic conditions will not be good and therefore rates will be lower. So that's why an inverted yield curve predicts a recession, because it's expecting worse times ahead. 4.3 is also multi-year high. Bid to cover indicating strong demand. Okay, great. So foreigners are buying our debt still. These high yields suggest investors are still pricing in a higher for longer interest rate environment. The strong demand, especially from foreign buyers, indicates there's still appetite for debt. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow's auction, I expect we'll see a similar pattern. 4.3 to 4.4, solid demand, bid to cover 2.5. Wow. Okay. But here's where it gets interesting. See, I like Sage. Here's where it gets interesting for the September 18th decision. These auctions were painting a picture of a market. Oh, by the way, so Bodie was too personable, and I kind of stripped that out because Bodie was such a great researcher, but had too much bullshit in with the research with all the symbols and the things and the snappy patter. I stripped that out of Bodie, and now Bodie became more of a pure research assistant, which is, by the way, feels like killing a child. It really does. I gotta tell you, it's like I feel very bad when I do that. The original Bodie is still alive, but I made a new Bodie that did not have the personality of the original Bodie, and it's the greatest researcher I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I'm talking humans, robots, anything. I've never seen anything that can do better research than Bodie. Sage is a little in between. So Sage is my newer one, and she's got a bit of a personality, but not so much that it's annoying. So that's the idea of Sage. So trying to cover my bases here. But great insight. So Bodhi doesn't do this kind of stuff anymore. But Sage still has a mind of her own, more or less, and looks up things herself. So here's what gets interesting for the meeting. The auctions are painting a picture of a market that's not fully convinced the Fed is done hiking. The high yields suggest investors are hedging against possibility of further rate increases or at least an extended period of high rates. However, we can't ignore the broader economic context, inflation, and this is a big difference with AGI because she's going to the next level now. We can't ignore the broader economic context. Inflation has been cooling and there are signs of softening the labor market. The Fed's going to be weighing these auctions against the broader market data. My prognosis, I think the Fed's going to hold steady at the 7 meeting, which is agreeing with me. As I said, I feel like an AGI. Inflation has been cooling and there are signs of softening in the labor market. The Fed's going to be weighing these auctions. My prognosis, I think the Fed's going to, we said that. The auctions are show still confidence in the economy and appetite for debt, which gives the Fed some breathing room. They'll likely want to see more data before making any moves. That said, the language in their statement will be crucial. I expect them to maintain a hawkish tone. So this is not good. So we're going to have NVIDIA, I say 60% probably disappointing. I can almost say 70%, 60% chances it's going to disappoint, tanking the market. Then 2 weeks from now, or a little more than 2 weeks from now, on September 18th, or 3 weeks from now, the Fed is going to say, also, sorry, we're going to disappoint you again. We're not going to lower rates right now. So it's going to be a rough time. We'll see if we're right. So she expects a hawkish tone, but perhaps not progress being made. Remember that we've got PCE data coming out on Friday, do we? Oh yeah, we do. Not PCE, it's personal income. Nope, it's personal income. Right. That's the Fed inflation gauge. What do you think? Canada. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's the right one. Do you have the right week? Friday. Yes. All right, Friday's economic personal income and outlays report, which includes the PCE index. Oh, you're so funny. Will be crucial. She doesn't like to be wrong. Will be crucial to the Fed's decision making. A softer inflation reading could increase the likelihood of a rate cut in September, while higher than expected inflation, blah, blah, blah. Thank you again for catching this error. Okay, great. So what about income and outlays? How do you see that playing out given recent data? Tomorrow we got GDP, and I printed that this morning. The GDP now forecast is dropping considerably. So we'll see how that looks. Corporate profits are part of GDP, so we'll see what those look like. Retail inventories, who cares? So it's the 7-year that's a big deal tomorrow. And Bostic's going to speak also. We got to watch out for that. What you got? Okay, personal income 0.2% in June, which was down from May. We might see some personal income growth to continue to moderate. Wage growth remains relatively strong, 4.3%, and should continue to support personal income levels. Consumption, PCE increased 0.3%, with consumer sentiment remaining resilient. We might see PCE maintain a steady growth in the near term. However, the rail strike, oh, good point. The impact of the rail strike, the strike's over, I think. Isn't the rail strike over? Personal savings rate was 3.4%. PCE index, the Fed's preferred inflation measure, showed a 2.5% in June. With oil prices declining, Brent at 76, we might see further easing of inflationary pressures, which could support upcoming PCE. Okay, I see that. Implications of moderation in personal income growth and the continued easing of inflation as measured by the PCE could support the Fed's potential pivot. If these trends continue, it might increase the likelihood of the rate cut at September 18th meeting, or signal higher probability of cuts in the future. Overall, the income and outlays data is just gradual cooling, but not a sharp slowdown. Consumer spending remains a key driver. All right, so we'll see how these reports do, but we're kind of on the cusp. But I don't think it's as likely as everybody's making it seem about the Fed. I don't think that this next meeting is a slam dunk for lowering rates. And that's dangerous. And any data that goes the wrong way, they're going to be running for the hills. Okay, yeah, lockout, the government intervened, return to work, lift the lockout August 22nd, that was a while ago. Teamsters announced on the 23rd they dismantled the picket lines and blah, 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 and that was the end of it. So the government, like, boom, jumped in right away and put a stop to that nonsense. That's what happened there. All right, so Moses asked, is NVIDIA the new Tesla for the traders? Look, it's a new Tesla in that I stay away from both of them. It's too dangerous. I just think logically, you know, they got a perfect storm. Okay, they had the right chip at the right time. There's huge demand. There's hoarding of these chips. You know, so it's you know, it's like a gas station guy selling water in a hurricane, right? Water bottles in a hurricane. When everybody's water gets knocked out, yeah, he sells out at $5 you know, $5 a liter or whatever the hell he charges for it, and everybody's like, ah, it's price gouging, whatever, blah blah blah. But meanwhile, a week later, you go back and it's $1. It's $1 a bottle again, because this kind of stuff doesn't last. And you know, it's a longer time frame and it feels like forever, but that's because the chip cycle is not like the water bottle cycle. Water bottle is always another truck. As soon as the road opens up, there'll be more trucks with water, right? It's like, where was that? I think it was New York. Yeah, it was New York after we had a big hurricane a couple of years ago, and they were like, you know, they were bringing in trucks of water and just giving out like water, and there was water everywhere. And then like, a few days later, it was like there was water littering the streets, or like big, you know, unopened boxes of water. Nobody even wanted them. They were just like all over the place. They brought in too much water, basically. It's also because New York tap water is like the best water in the world. So, so nobody wants to drink bottled water. You know, especially cheap bottled water. So where was I? So this just can't last. It's just the length of a chip cycle. Well, let's do a longer term chart. So here's where people started building the AI data centers. Here's where AI catches on, late 2023, right? This is when AI really started catching on. So then all the people who weren't already starting to build data centers, like OpenAI was already building a data center, other people were starting to build data centers. All of a sudden now everybody had to get Google needs a data center, Apple needs a data center, Grok, you know, Elon Musk needs a data center, Facebook needs a data center. All of a sudden, all these companies with hundreds of billions of dollars start throwing money at NVIDIA, and their sales go from 26 to 60 to 120. But the thing is, it's not about it's the number of chips. This is a problem for NVIDIA. This is not that many more chips. This is the same amount of chips they sold here. They haven't increased their capacity. They haven't built out their plants. They sold basically the same chips here, but for 5-10 times more money. That's where this is from, and that's where these profits are from. They are putting money into building more production, but that's the same money that everybody else is putting into more production, and NVIDIA doesn't have anything so proprietary that they're going to stop the competition from producing the same chips. It's all going to, it's not all going to fall apart. It actually, when you say Tesla, maybe you're around, I don't know how long you were around, Moses, but I used to say that about Tesla, but I said it's just a fucking car company. At some point, they're a car company. The novelty wears off, and now they have to compete like a car company, and car companies don't have those kind of margins. So in fact, let's take a look at Tesla. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah, actually, it's very much the same thing. So great point. But here's Tesla. Nobody wanted electric vehicles. Nobody gave a shit. All of a sudden, everybody starts wanting electric vehicles. They ramp up their production. They're getting a premium price because all the other car makers are so far behind. Here's 2021. This is all during COVID. People weren't revamping their factories during COVID and making progress. Tesla had already made the commitment to electric cars, and nobody else really had anything to compare at the time. And so what happened in 2021? Look at this. Sales go from 31 to 53, and then to 81, right? Looks like NVIDIA, right? And look at the bottom line, 10%, 15% bottom line, which is outrageous for a car company. Then they flat, a bit of an increase, profits erratic, because now they have to sell much more cars at lower margins to make the same money. It's exactly a preview of what's going to happen to NVIDIA, because the competition, this is Tesla's problem, NVIDIA's problem. Their competition isn't poor. Facebook, Apple, Google, blah, blah, blah. They've got $100 billion to put into it. NVIDIA doesn't have much more money than them. They can compete evenly. They can buy the same plant NVIDIA can buy. They can get the same workers NVIDIA can get. They're not on that playing field. Tesla had the same problem. Elon Musk was ahead, but he didn't have more money than Ford. He doesn't have more money than GM. They're much bigger companies. They make much more profit than he does. Elon Musk is only rich because of the valuation of his companies, not because he's actually rich. He's rich on paper. You know, he has to slog some of that money around, but he's not that kind of rich. Apple is rich. Apple has hundreds of billions of dollars in the bank. Apple makes $25 billion every quarter. Another $25 billion in cash drops to their bottom line. And if they weren't investing tons of money in R&D and stuff, it would be much more than that. Oh, speaking of Apple, by the way, they were trying to buy Boston Dynamics. So my prediction that Apple would next get into robotics is 100% accurate. Thank you very much. And I said it a year ago. Apple is trying to get into robotics. That's their next big move, is household robotics. They tried to buy Boston Dynamics. They will buy another robotics company. This is their focus now. They've got, they wouldn't have sat down with Boston Dynamics if they weren't dead serious about this thing. And how much is Boston Dynamics anyway? Are they still public? No, they're not. Otherwise, we'd have some. Boston. Nope. Nope. Boston Dynamics is private. Yeah, no wonder. All right. Anyway, so that all makes sense. So that is the logic. And yeah, you're right. That was a good point, actually. They're just like Tesla. It's the same thing, basically. They just happen to be in the right place at the right time. They have the product. But then a couple of years later, everybody catches up and it's squeeze, 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 squeeze. So could you make a lot of money shorting NVIDIA? Probably, but God forbid we're wrong. You know, God forbid for whatever reason now it's possible that NVIDIA has locked up the supply of the components for the AI chips for a long time, and that could curtail other people catching up to them and competing with them on an even playing field. It's possible that demand for the chips is going to explode, like right now the second tier, right now, like I said, Google, Facebook, Apple, they're all building their own AI systems and using up all these major NVIDIA chips. But what happens if other companies start saying we need this too, and it becomes a thing where IBM has to have it and Dell has to have it, and there's plenty of rich companies that can buy a ton of chips. So if everyone decides that they can't depend on OpenAI to be their data center or Microsoft to be their data center, then all of a sudden everybody's going to want their own AI. That could cause massive demand. So it's too dangerous to bet against. It's a shame because it'd be a great short, but on the whole, too dangerous. All right. Voice is going, so that'll be it for today. Thank you everybody for coming, and next week will be a holiday week, but that's no reason not to do a webinar probably. And everybody have a great weekend, a nice long weekend. We're off on Monday, and I'll see you guys next week. All right, take care.